What is your view of the catcher interference rule? I got about 12 questions on this. I'm not convinced that any of the 12 people who asked this exact question are aware of my relationship to the catcher interference rule. I bring you back to 2011 in Major League Baseball. I'm in San Francisco in an extra inning game. We have a player. It's the Marlins against the Giants. We've got a player named Scott Cousins. We're in extra innings. I believe, Coca, that we had come back to tie the game. I don't think we blew the save. I think they blew the save to bring it to extra innings. But I can't remember that part of it. But what happened next, I shall never forget. There's a single. Scott Cousins is coming in. Buster Posey is catching. There's a play at the plate. And Scott Cousins barrels into Buster Posey in a way that makes Pete Rhodes look like a wussy. Scott Cousins stands up. He's safe. We score a run. He's bleeding. And Buster Posey's not moving. The crowd is going crazy because Buster Posey at that time, they were in the middle of their 10, 12, 14 World Series championship run. It was the makings of a dynasty. This was the year they didn't make it to a World Series or win the World Series. But they were a very, very good team. The game ends. Scott Cousins is in the clubhouse. And we're talking. The team is talking. And the Giants owners and management and GM and manager were furious. There was SportsCenter. Every highlight show was leading with this play. Buster Posey, MVP, star of the league, knocked out by scrub Scott Cousins. What kind of dirty player is Scott Cousins? He's not dirty in the least. One of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. You think Scott Cousins is trying to hurt Buster Posey? That play crushed Scott Cousins. That play impacted his career. Buster Posey's out, and all of a sudden, we go to an owners meeting, and owners start talking about how important it is that that never happens again. Their point was that when we've got a good player, we've got to keep that player on the field. We do not want to pay players not to play. We've got to stop injuries. It's hard enough and bad enough with the injuries that we can't control, but self-inflicted injuries, we've got to get rid of. We cannot have collisions at the plate. This was not done because we were interested in the health of the catcher, didn't want catchers to get concussions, wanted to make sure they could add 2 + 2 when they were 69 years old. That was not at all what we were thinking. That's not what we said to you publicly when the rule came out, that we're interested in the safety of our players, like the NFL is interested in the safety of their players with CTE, GMAB. This was owners saying we are sick and tired of paying players on the DL. It was called the disabled list back then. So the Buster Posey rule gets passed. It gets written and sent to the clubs. We looked at it and said, what the hell is this? How are umpires going to call this rule? It's impossible. Catchers have to give a lane to the runner to score at the plate, except if the flight of the ball brings the catcher into the line of the runner. Huh? We would teach our catchers and our outfielders to throw into the line of the runner. You don't want the run to score. The best way for a run not to score is to block the plate. The best way to block the plate is to do exactly what Gary Sanchez of the Twins did. It's to put your knee down and make it impossible for the runner to score. Have you ever watched a second baseman apply a tag to a man stealing second? You are taught to catch the ball on the bounce or the fly, depending on who's throwing it from catcher, and you put your inside knee, your left knee down, parallel to second base. That's why we teach players, don't slide head first. You're going to break your finger either on the base itself or on the player's leg. We'd prefer you to slide feet first. And if you slide head first, and we'd like to have you wear mittens because we don't want you to get hurt. Are you getting the theme? We don't want our players hurt, but we want to score. Every single year since 2011, there have been complaints made to whether it was Joe Torre or Mike Hill or Commissioner Seelig or Manford that the rule, the catcher interference rule, was not being applied equally. Instant replay was not changing that fact. And we didn't know what to expect from one game to the next, and you can't run a league like that. And we were told time and time again that once this rule has now been put in place, and it's been around for 10 years, once this rule has been put in place, we cannot go backwards. We have told everyone we're about the safety of the catcher and the safety of our players. We cannot allow for those types of collisions to take place. Owners said, we don't want the collisions, we don't want the players to be injured, but we need clarity of the rule. There are people who are really smart in the commissioner's office who write rules. So we'll agree on a rule. You'll have a rules committee and a competition committee, but it actually has to be written down and put in a rule book. Have you ever read the rule book and seen how the rule book describes certain of these rules? You have to go through every possible scenario. You have to describe it so that umpires and team officials and players understand what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. The catcher interference rule is the most confusing, ineffective rule in baseball. That's slight hyperbole. It is among the most confusing and ineffective rules in baseball. My view of it from the beginning has been the same, which is it should not have been instituted. And if it had not been Buster Posey and it had been a backup catcher or a Marlins catcher, which was one of my big arguments, if that were our guy, if that were Ramon Castro or Mike Redmond getting clocked by one of the Giants players, we're not having this conversation. But we got to protect Buster Posey. It made us so angry as other teams. That good old Buster got hurt by Scott Cousins, creating this unbelievable tail. T-A-I-L and T-A-L-E. The tail is what's happened for the last 11 years. The T-A-L-E is the story of the day where Scott Cousins was after Buster Posey and it was career-ending, which it wasn't. Not even close. Ridiculous. When rules are made with the intent of safety, when rules are made with the intent of changing the game, you better get it right or you're going to have unintended consequences.